Okay guys, so today we're going to learn about a new part of speech. We have talked about this quite a few times over the year, but we're going to learn more about it today. And we are going to learn about adverbs. Adverbs. So make sure at the top of your blank page in your English notebook, you have adverbs and then today's date. Make sure that you're in your English notebook, not your vocabulary notebook or anything like that. So, first of all, adverbs tell more about a verb. So remember we talked about adjectives and how they describe nouns? Well, adverbs describe verbs. They tell us more about a verb. They tell us how, when, or, whoops, I spelled the wrong, where, or where an action, which is a verb, happened. So, let's see. Adverbs can be written before or after the verb. So, just like adjectives, where mostly they appear before the verb, and sometimes they appear, the noun, just like adjectives mostly appear before the noun, but also sometimes appear after a noun, as long as there is a linking verb between them. Adverbs can also be written before or after a verb. So, for example, forgot I was writing a sentence. We happily walked up to receive an award. So, happily is the adverb because it describes how they walked. This is an example of where happily, or the adverb, comes before the verb. Now, it can also come after. We walked happily up to receive an award. So again, we see that happily, the adverb, which describes how they walked, can come after. In this case, we don't have to have a linking verb or anything between the verb and the adverb because we already have a verb connecting it. Let's see. So we've got these adverbs tell how. Let's look at adverbs that tell when. Let's see. We are going to the store tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow is always a word that I misspell and I put too many M's in it. I always want to put too many M's. So we are going to the store tomorrow. So in this case, we've learned that most adverbs end in ly. They don't always end in ly. This is a case. So we see our verb is are going. Our verb is are going. We are going. And we're looking for the word that describes this, which in this case is tomorrow. It says when we're doing this action. We're going tomorrow. We could also say tomorrow we are going to the store, so then it would come before. So the adverb doesn't always come immediately before or after the verb. We can see that here. Okay, so we've got adverbs that say how and when. Now let's say where. We are traveling far this summer. So we have our verb, are traveling, which is a helping verb and a main action verb. And we're trying to see, okay, which of these words describes where we're traveling? Well, it's the word far. So we see another adverb that does not end in ly. However, this one does come right after the adverb. Now this one, this word far, we couldn't put before the verb, because then we would say we far are traveling, or far we are traveling this summer, which doesn't really make sense. It's not how we really speak. So we see, even though we know that most adverbs end in ly, like happily or we jogged quickly, quickly describes how we jogged. We see that some adverbs do not end in ly. Usually the ones that say when or where may not end in ly. The ones that say how usually do end in ly. So pay attention to that when we get to the guided and independent practice. Okay, let's see. Other adjectives, so I'm going to erase this because I'm going to give you some more examples of adverbs, excuse me, not adjectives, that tell when and where. We know how the adjectives are normally going to end with ly, when it's telling how. But when and where do not typically end in ly. So I will give you some examples, but I do have to erase this in order to fit it. So if you're still writing, pause this video, maybe go back so that you can catch on with anything that you missed, and then we can continue. So, adverbs that tell how. Well, they usually end with ly. We quickly ran to the playground. We jogged. Wait, no, never mind. I would be using the same one. We studiously got ready for the test. Neatly, I wrote my name on my paper. So those are all adverbs that tell how. Now, adverbs that tell when. Well, again, they're going to tell when an action happened. They include, but are not limited to, these are not the only adverbs, but they do include soon, often, now, never, or later, and etc., because they continue. So these are examples: soon, often, late, later, late, never, now. These are examples of adverbs that tell when. So for example, Myra got to the show late. Our verb is got. That's when the past tense of go. She got to the show. When did she get somewhere? Late. So those are examples of adverbs that tell when. Usually, the adverbs that tell how are going to be right near the verb. The adjectives that tell when may not be. Now, adverbs that tell where. Adverbs that tell where include here, there, anything that says a place. Upstairs, let's see, downstairs, there's lots. There are a lot. Anything that tells where something happened, any word that says where something happened is an adverb. So, for example, can you see me? Yes. My dog went outside. So we see the verb, they have the same word in them, so they have that verb in them, so I'm getting them confused. We see the verb went, and then we see the adverb outside because it tells where the dog went. So remember, whenever we're looking at adverbs, we are looking at a word that describes how, when, or where an action happened. Okay, so for this lesson, we're going to do that thing where now we're going to do the first guided practice. So, leave your notebook out because we're not done with this lesson. We will be taking some more notes. But leave your notebook out and then go ahead and get out today's packet and tear out the guided practice. Tear it out because we're going to do that together. I do not need that back. And then that's what we will do right now. Okay guys, so you should be looking at the first page of the guided practice. It has the page number 162 on the bottom left. And let's begin by reading the bullet points at the top. First, an adverb is a word that tells more about a verb. Some adverbs tell how an action takes place. Some adverbs tell when an action takes place. Some adverbs tell where an action takes place. So what the directions here say is underline the adverb in each sentence. Then write if the adverb tells how, when, or where the action takes place. Well, we're going to add a direction. First, we are going to circle the verb in each sentence. Once you know the verb, that will help you to find the adverb, because once you find the verb, you know you're looking for, okay, I'm looking for how, when, or where this verb took place. And that will help you decide which word is the adverb, and then you'll be able to say, okay, is this adverb telling how the verb happened, when the verb happened, or where the verb happened? So, number one, my mother and I went to the library together for information about our ancestors. Well, we see the verb, which we're going to circle, is the word went. So now we're trying to see when, a verb that says how, when, or where they went. Now I know it does say went to the library, but to the library doesn't say, is not exactly what we're looking for. So in this case, we see that the adverb is together because it says how they went. So together is the adverb and it says how they went, or we went, my mother and I. Number two, many Native Americans lived freely on this land. Well, the verb is lived, so we're looking for a word that says how, when, or where this action took place. We see that immediately following is the word freely. We had a hint because it ended in ly, so we know that's the adverb. So is it saying where, when, or how this action took place? It is saying how they lived. So they lived freely. Now number 3, tomorrow we will visit our local Museum of Natural History. Well, will visit is the verb. It's a helping verb and an action verb. And now we're seeing a word that says where, when, or how we visited. Well, tomorrow tells us when this action took place, when we visited. Number 4, were they traveling far in search of gold? Well, our verb is traveling, and so we're looking for a word that describes that verb. In this case, it is the word far, because far tells us where they were traveling, okay? Okay, sorry, there's a hair hanging from the bottom of my dress, and it's really bothering me. I'll try to find it later. Okay, now number 5. Did James Marshall first find gold at Sutter's Mill? Well, find is the verb, and we're looking for something that describes that verb. In this case, it is the word first, because that tells when he found the gold. Number 6, John Sutter Jr. built a new city nearby along the Sacramento River. Well, built is the verb, and nearby is the adverb that tells where. So, let's look at the difference between went to the library, why to the library is not an adverb, and why far and nearby is an adverb. It's because to the library is a phrase. So that would not be a word with a part that shows the part of speech. It is a phrase. So, and that is a type of phrase that we are actually going to talk about that fits with adverbs, but that is not the adverb that we're looking for. We're looking for one word that says where, not a phrase. So that is why far and nearby are the adverbs describing the verbs rather than to the library. Because to the library is a phrase, and when we're looking for an adverb, we're looking for one word that says where. Not a whole phrase that says where, but one word. Number 7, we patiently sifted the sand for gold. Well, sifted is the verb, and the word patiently is the adverb that tells how they sifted. Number 8, our uncle examined the rock carefully. Well, examined is the verb, and carefully tells how he examined the rock. Number 9, he carelessly threw the stone back in the water. Well, threw is the verb, and carelessly tells how he threw the stone. Remember, back in the water would not be the adverb because we can't use a phrase to describe a verb. We can't say that an adverb is a phrase used to describe the verb. It has to be one word. Number 10, that greedy miner looked at them suspiciously. Well, the verb is looked. And how did he look at them? He looked at them suspiciously. So suspiciously is an adverb that tells how. Number 11, we quickly ran down the path. Well, ran is the verb. The adverb cannot be down the path telling us where because it's not one word. So the adverb is quickly because it says how the verb happened. Number 12, we then found the gold. Found is the verb, and the word then describes when they found the gold. Okay, so you can see that the adverb is not always right next to the verb. Sometimes there are several words between. So the easiest way to figure out which word is the adverb is find the verb first, and then look for the one word, not the phrase, that tells when, where, or how that verb happened. Remember, you're not looking for a phrase, so to the library would not be an adverb telling where. Down the path would not be an adverb telling where because you're looking for one word. So nearby and far are one word that describe where something happened. So pay attention to that. Don't pick a phrase just because it tells where. It has to be one word if it's the adverb. Okay, so now we're done with that guided practice. So now go back to your English notebook because now we are going to talk about when to use the words good and well so that you are using them correctly. Okay, so now we're going to talk about something that doesn't necessarily just have to do with adverbs, but now that we know about adverbs, we can kind of understand why this is, and it is something that people often get wrong. They say these things incorrectly, and so now we're going to fix that, and that is the problem of good versus well. As in, when do we use good to describe something, and when do we use well to describe something? Well, let's use a different type of bullet point. Good is an adjective. So good is an adjective. Remember, adjectives are describing words that describe nouns. So good is an adjective, and should only be used to describe nouns. And what that means is whenever you are writing or saying something and you want to describe a noun, then you would use the word, good. So, for example, Charlotte is a good swimmer. The word good is an adjective that describes the noun swimmer. Now we know swim is a verb, but when we're talking about a swimmer, we're talking about a person who does that verb, a person who swims. So we would say Charlotte is a good swimmer because good is an adjective, so it is being used to describe the noun swimmer. Now, well is an adverb. So well is not an adjective. It is not going to be used to describe a verb. Well is an adverb when it is used, when it is used to describe a verb. So we would not use well to describe a noun. And listen, you can actually hear that this sounds kind of funny. Charlotte is a well swimmer. That doesn't make sense. But if we say Charlotte swims well. Well, in this case, well is an adverb because it is describing how Charlotte swims. In this case, swims is a verb. So we would use well to describe how she swims. We would not use good to describe an adjective. That is the biggest thing I want you to take away from this lesson. We would not use well to describe a verb. I keep messing up. I'm sorry. We would not use well to describe a noun. Okay? Ignore the two things I just said and messed up on. We would not use well to describe a noun, and we would not use good to describe a verb. That right there is the biggest thing I want you to remember from this lesson. Do not use good to describe a verb. Charlotte swims good. That is not correct grammar. You may hear people say things like that all the time. She cooks good. She runs good. She does good on her homework. That is not correct grammar. You would use well. She does well on her homework. She cooks well. But if you're describing a noun like she is a good cook. Well, in this case, we're using cook as a noun to describe someone who cooks. So then you could use good. Or she is good. No, we're not going to say that because that's just confusing. But the biggest thing I want you to take from this lesson is do not use good to describe a verb. It is not correct grammar. Because we don't use an adjective to describe a verb, and we don't use an adverb to describe a noun. So always remember, you use well when you're trying to describe a verb, you use good when you're trying to describe a noun. And now we'll do some guided practice on that as well. Okay, so now we're going to look at the second page of the guided practice. So go ahead and look at the back of the page that we just did a minute ago. It has the number 163 on the bottom right corner, and we're going to do this together. So first, let's start by reading the bullet points. First, good is an adjective that is used to describe nouns. Well is an adverb that tells how about a verb. Now this is a new point that I haven't made yet. Do not confuse, Do not confuse the adjective good with the adverb well. This is the point that I had not brought up yet. Use well as an adjective only when you refer to someone's health. So, put the word only right there with a caret. You only use well as an adjective when you're describing someone's health. She doesn't feel well. Okay, number 1. Oh, it says complete each sentence by writing the word good or well on the line. So we need to figure out, are we describing a verb, in which case we need to use well, or are we describing a noun, in which case we need to use good? Remember, never, ever, 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 ever use good to describe a verb. Ever, ever, ever. Always use well to describe a verb, never a noun, unless you're talking about someone's health. Number 1. Today our team did blank in the class treasure hunt game. Well, we see that we are using a word to describe how the team did. Did is a verb, which means we have to use the adverb well. Today our team did well in the class treasure hunt game. Now it may sound just fine to you to say today our team did good in the class treasure hunt game, but that is not correct. I want that to sound weird and bad in your mind. Do not use good to describe a verb. We're describing the verb did, so we have to use well. Number 2, our teacher hid the treasure pieces so blank that they were very hard to find. Well, in this case, we're not describing the treasure pieces. We're describing how the teacher hid those treasure pieces. Hid is a verb, so that means we have to use the adverb well. Our teacher hid the treasure pieces so well that they were very hard to find. We're not describing the treasure pieces. We're not saying when, where, or how the treasure pieces were. We're describing when, where, or how, in this case how, they were hidden. Number 3, the other team also did blank, but we found the pieces faster than they did. So again, we have the verb did, which means we have to use the adverb well to describe it. The other team also did well, but we found the pieces faster than they did. Number 4, though I didn't feel blank, I helped find the last hidden treasure piece. Well, in this case we have feel, so we're trying to describe somebody's health, in which case we would use well. We also see that feel is a verb. It's a linking verb, but it is a verb. So we're describing how they felt, which is a verb, which is when we use the adverb well. Number 5, it was a blank experience to win the game for a second year. Well, we're not describing was. We're not describing how it was. We can't describe how was happened. So that means there is another verb here, win, but we're not describing that. We're actually describing the experience, which is a noun, so I would say good. It was a good experience to win the game for a second year. This is where, when you're trying to describe a noun, this is where it's not going to sound right when you use the wrong word. It was a well experience to win the game for a second year. That does not sound right. So luckily, when we're trying to describe a noun, it's not going to sound right to use the word well. For some of you, it won't sound right to use the word good to describe a verb, but I want the rest of you to get to that point. Number 6, this river is a blank place to look for gold pieces. Now we're not describing is, we can't really describe is, and we're not actually describing the word look. We're not describing how we looked or where we looked or when we looked. We're describing the place, which is a noun, so we would use the word good. This river is a good place to look for gold pieces. Again, if we used well, it wouldn't sound right. This river is a well place to look for gold pieces. So we see. Number 7. Grandfather, would it be a blank idea to look for gold in the river? Well, we're not describing the verb be. We are not describing the verb look. So we are describing the noun idea, which means we have to use good. Grandfather, would it be a good idea to look for gold in the river? Let's listen to it if we use the wrong word. Grandfather, would it be a well idea to look for gold in the river? It doesn't make sense. So now we know good is the correct version. If you're reading a sentence and good is the only word that makes sense, then you know you're describing a noun. If good or well makes sense, well then you need to look. Are you describing a verb or are you describing a noun? Some of you may say there is no sentence where good or well sounds correct. It's only sentences that good sounds correct and sentences where well sounds correct. So, good job. You're at that point. Number 8. If we pan for gold all day and night, we should do blank. Well, we see we're describing the word do. There is no noun or other verb nearby, so we're describing do, which is a verb. So we have to use the adverb well. If we pan for gold all day and night, we should do well. It should not sound right to you, and I want it to eventually not sound right to you to say, if we pan for gold all day and night, we should do good. Ugh, no, don't say it. It has to be the adverb well. Number 9, we can have a blank time swimming in the water if we do not find anything. Well, we're not describing have. We're not describing how, when, or where we have something. We are actually describing the noun time. So we have to use good. We can have a good time swimming in the water if we do not find anything. Well would not sound right there. Number 10, is your father feeling blank enough to come with us? Well, feeling is how that means that we're describing somebody's health. We are also describing how they felt, so we have to use well. Is your father feeling well enough to come with us? So that means whenever you're trying to say that you are feeling sick, you would not say, I don't feel good. You would say, I don't feel well. So remember that because you're describing the feeling, how you felt. Okay, very good. So that's it for today's lesson. You do have some independent practice. Go ahead and get out your packet. And you just worked on the good versus well, which should be torn out. And now you are looking at this independent practice. On the front page, you will follow the steps to change each adjective into an adverb. So that means number 1, you have loud plus ly. Well, if you put those together, you get the adverb loudly. So you would write loudly right here. And then if the adverb tells you how, you put an X in the how column. If the adverb tells you when, you put an X in the when column. So loudly would tell you how an adjective happened. I'm sorry, a noun, how a verb happened. So you would put an X over the T in the how column. Lately would tell you when something happened. So you would put an X on the C in the when column. So pay attention to that. You can self-check yourself, because if you do not have it correct, then this answer to this riddle is not going to make sense. So follow those steps, put those words and that suffix together. Some of them you may have to take out letters. You'll see a minus instead of a plus. And then tell whether that adjective, you need to say whether that adverb tells how a verb happened or when a verb happened. So pay close attention to that, because then in the end, any letters that are not crossed out, you will use to answer the riddle at the bottom. If your riddle makes no sense, that means you need to go back and check yourself. Then on the back, the directions say, make sure you read the box at the top, and the directions say read each sentence and look at the underlined word. Then tell if it is an adjective or an adverb. So each of these underlined words describes something. If it describes a noun, that means you're going to write adjective on the line. If the underlined word describes a verb, then you're going to write adverb on the line. So pay close attention, figure out exactly what it's describing, and then mark that, or tell whether it is an adjective because it is describing a noun, or if it is an adverb because it is describing a verb. Okay, so go ahead and get started on that independent practice. If you have any questions about today's lesson, please reach out to me. Don't just guess. Make sure that you maybe need to rewatch part of the video, or you need to reach out to me. Please do not guess, because it's very easy to get a very low grade on this just by guessing and not following all the directions. Okay, that's it. Remember, if you have any questions, reach out to me later.